Okay. The the reason I wanted to do it so that I see the same as you see is because I'm recording what I'm doing from my screen. So we're going to have a lesson where we go through the relevant stuff for your test, and I'm recording it as I speak, and everything I do now I'm going to put up on YouTube so that you can see it at a later time to help you revise. Don't laugh. That will be on YouTube. Okay, so let's not get too silly about that situation. Okay, so statistics. It's just what you already did in class, but I'm going to put it up on YouTube so that it's there for you to read with me explaining it. So we wrote the topic called statistics deals with how to present and interpret data. Then we looked at some data about your heights, and that was all the boys and all the girls. And the mean was the one where you, gennemsnitt in Danish, where you add them all up, divide by how many there are. So for the boys, it was add them all up and divide by 12 because there are 12 boys, and that came to 1.78 meters. That should say meters and not centimeters because you are all a bit bigger than 1.78 centimeters, I hope. My mistake will be on YouTube. And then the girls, similar thing. That should say meters and not centimeters. But add them all up, divide by how many there are, which was 8. And then the overall, again, should be meters. Add them all up, divide by 20 because there's 20 people. The mode was the most frequently occurring value, tupatel in Danish. Everybody laughs at the way I say tupatel. Don't know why. And for that, it was 1.78 for the boys. Oh, it's marvellous, isn't it? Because more boys are 1.78 than any other height. And for the girls, there is no mode because they were all different heights. And then overall 1.78 just because of the two people that were 1.78 and everybody else was a different height. Okay, then the median was the one that was in the middle when you put them in order. So those are all the boys in order, and if you count them in from the ends, bop, bop, clever, isn't it? Yeah. And then you kind of land between two, and the median is 1.78 for the boys, and then for the girls, again, it lands between 2. Now, the book you've got tells you to take the lower value, 1.66, but I've always done it where you take the mean of the two middle values. You'll find different books that tell you to do it different ways. It won't actually matter when it comes to your exam because they'll always give you something with an odd number of values, so it'll always land on an exact one. Okay, and then for everybody, the median is 1.75 because that's the middle value. Then I talked about something called quartiles, which, well, the median divided everything into the top and bottom 50%, and quartiles split those two halves into 4 quarters, so you get the bottom 25%, the top 25%, and the 50% in the middle, like this. So the boys, again, that was the median, 1.78, and then the two halves, or the top half, split into 2 halves, and well, between two values, so I took that as 1.725, and then the top half, splitting it, so that was the bottom 25% cut-off point, and then the top half, counting from the ends, and then splitting the top half into 2 halves at a point which was 1.825. Again, all of these should be in meters, of course. So that cuts off the top 25% from the rest. Same thing for the girls. So you've got the median cutting it into half, and then quartiles cutting the 2 halves into 2 halves, and then overall. Okay, so it's just splitting it in 3 values that split it into 4 blocks which are the bottom 25%, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, and 75 to 100. We have a question, Victor. I've made lots of mistakes, haven't I? I've written top and bottom 50%. That's just because I cut and pasted it from something else. That should say top and bottom 25%. Whoopsie. Other statistics, highest value, lowest value, and then the range, or variationsbrød in Danish. Don't laugh at the way I say that, which is the biggest minus the smallest. So, for example, for the boys, the highest value was 1.89, the lowest value was 1.67, so the range is the difference between the two, 0.22. And then I talked about box plots that you can draw that have all of that information on. So for the boys, you've got a box in the middle that shows the upper and lower quartiles and the median. So the box in the middle shows the cutoff point for 25%, 50%, and 75% of the people. And then the line stretches out to the highest and lowest values. So a box plot is showing the highest and lowest values and the quartiles, including the median. And then there's the same thing for the girls. And then a box plot is good when you've got two sets of data and you want to compare them. So you can see that the boys are generally taller, but you can also see that the heights of the girls are a bit more spread out. And that's generally what they want for exam questions. Which group has the higher or lower values, and what about the spread? How spread out are the data values? So that's just a little note reminding you of that you wrote. Okay, so that was that. And then I'm going to show you something about probability. If I can just find, there it is. Sandsynlighed, yeah. And it measures the chance of something happening. So it can be a decimal from 0 to 1, or it can be a percentage, if you prefer, from 0 to 100%, or it can be a fraction as well. Something with a probability of 0 is something that's impossible. Something with a probability of 1 or 100% is something that you're certain is going to happen. So here's an example, picking balls out of a bag. There are 2 balls in the bag, so that there's a 2 out of 6 chance of picking a blue ball. So that's 2/6 as a fraction, which reduces to a third. If you want that as a decimal, so it's the 1 divided by 3 to give you 0.33333 going on forever. Or if you prefer that as a percentage is out of 100, so it's got to be that times 100, and that's about 33.3. I mean, in fact, 33.3333 going on forever. If you want to find the probability of one thing or another happening, you add them up. So the probability of red or blue, the probability of red is 3 over 6, the probability of blue is 2 out of 6, so the probability of red or blue is 5 out of 6, and that makes sense because there are 5 balls that you could pick in that bag that are red or blue. Find the probability of one thing and also another thing happening. We multiply. Now there's 2 examples I've given you here. If you want the probability of picking red and red again, so the chance of picking red the first time is 3 out of 6. The chance of picking red the second time, I'm assuming you put the ball back in the bag here, so we're replacing the balls every time. So it's 3 out of 6 again. So the chance of that happening the first time and again the second time, you've got to multiply. So 3 out of 6 times 3 out of 6 makes 9 out of 36. Top times top, 3 times 3 is 9. Bottom times bottom, 6 times 6 is 36. And 9 out of 36 is the same as a quarter. But it's different if you don't put the balls back every time. Because if you don't put the balls back, first of all, you've got 3 out of 6 reds, but then if you take 1 red out, you've only got 2 reds out of 5 balls. So the chance of picking red and red again, if you're not putting them back, is 3/6 times 2/5, and then that makes 6/30, which reduces to a fifth. Sometimes you get questions about dice, and it can help to do a little table of all the possibilities. Excuse me. So there's 36 ways you can throw 2 dice. You can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 on the first one, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 on the second one. So making various possible totals, you could get from 2 up to a maximum of 12, and those are all the different ways you can get them. So you're not that likely to get a total of 12, because there's only one way it can happen, a 6 with a 6. But you're more likely to get a total of 7, because there's lots of ways that could happen. It could be a 6 with a 1, or a 5 with a 2, or a 4 with a 3, or a 3 with a 4 the other way around, so on and so on. So, for example, the chance of getting 11 or better, there are 1, 2, 3 ways that could happen out of 36 ways that the thing could wind up. So 3 out of 36 is the same as a 12th. So the probability of 11 or better is a 12th. And finally, on probability, now that's meant to be the other way around, and the reason it's sideways is because I've made it into a handout for you with all this printed. So it's printed on the handout, and I forgot to flip it around for the tree diagram. But I mean, that's the dice. So if you just turn your head, it's basically the same thing. All of the different possible outcomes of throwing 2 dice are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, followed by another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So I've showed all the possible results you can get, and then you can see that there's 3 ways out of the 36 that you could get 11 or better. So it's just like before, a 3 out of 36 chance, which is the same as a 12th.